welcome to Man Gap Modified Fabrication and Off-Road. Today will be our first video of our 6.4 budget Hemi swap series. So stick around to learn some more. So there's plenty of companies around that are offering Hemi swaps nowadays. It kind of seems to be like not necessarily the norm, but it kind of seems to be the go-to, especially in the Wrangler community. Most of these companies are you're going to spend a ton of money doing these swaps. And behind me you can see we have two. This one here, this is a 6.4. This one here's a 5.7. These two kind of both have no expense spared, really. Now they are DIY Hemis, but at the end of the day, we really threw some money to get these things done. Now we want to show you guys what you can do just in a normal garage like this, and how you can really make your dollar last a long time and do a Hemi swap on your own. So in our area, Hemis seem to be pretty simple and easy to find. Obviously the easiest Hemi swap and the cheapest Hemi swap, not necessarily the easiest, but the cheapest would be a 5.7 truck Hemi in a JK. So this is kind of what we've got here. This is your typical 5.7 Hemi swap in a Wrangler. Now, we are going to be doing another one in a 2018 Wrangler. However, we were really struggling to find a 5.7, and the 6.4s seem to be a little bit easier to find. So here's our 6.4. That's going to be going in our 18 Wrangler. My uncle's got an 18 Wrangler, and we took this out, which has a 6.4 in it, like I said previously. We took this out and decided to see how she would do. Well, my uncle went with us and ended up struggling a bit and blowing up his stock 3.6. So instead of spending $3,000 or more on another 3.6, we decided that the 6.4 is the way to go. So in this series, we're kind of gonna show you guys what you can do to really do a budget style build, and how you can do it with just simple hand tools and things you got laying around. There's plenty of ways that you guys can do this, but we're gonna kind of show you the way that we are gonna go about it and do it. I'll break it down price wise. I'll show you guys the simplest and easiest ways to do it. So stick around. If you're interested to learn how to Hemi swap your Jeep, this would be the place to go. So typically, when you do a Hemi swap on a Jeep, people are tending to do an 8-speed swap. So you can see here, there's your 8-speed shifter. I'm also running an 8-speed in mine over here. Now the 8-speeds are great, right? They shift extremely fast. They are good for a lot of power. However, the 8-speeds are extremely finicky. Not only are the 8-speeds typically finicky, they can be extremely costly. So when we did this Jeep here, I was able to find this transmission locally for about $275. That's very difficult to do nowadays. So if you have a newer JK, for instance like our 2018 that we're going to do the 6.4 swap on, that Jeep comes with a NAG 1 transmission. Now the NAG 1 is good for up to around 600 horsepower, I believe. In this Hemi here, this is going to be a completely stock built Hemi, so we're going to say maybe 500 horsepower, roughly in that area. So that transmission should hold up just fine. However, when you do keep a NAG 1, you will need to swap the bell housing and the torque converter. Now, when you swap the bell housing, you need a WK bell housing, which is pretty difficult to find, and they're kind of expensive. They're right around $500 if you're going to go ahead and buy one yourself from Mopar. And the torque converters are typically around like $800. So in our case, we got lucky And we got right here, this is a Nag 1 that came out of a Hemi swap previously. That transmission's got about 60,000 miles on it, and our 18 Wrangler's got about 70 to 80,000 miles on it. So it should be fairly decent. So that's kind of the route that we're going to go, because it's going to be the cheapest route to keep this as budget friendly as possible. So if you have a Nag 1 in your Jeep and you're interested in doing a Hemi swap and you don't want to go the 8-speed route, keep watching. We'll show you guys how to do it. Now the most costly thing about doing the Hemi swap is going to obviously be the wiring harness and the computer. Now there's plenty of places that make this stuff for the Hemi swaps, but we're going to go through Hotwire Auto. That's where this one came from. The other one's from Jeep Speed Shop. Now that's a good place to go. There's really good information there. It's typically a little bit more expensive, and from my understanding, Hotwire actually makes the harnesses sold through Jeep Speed Shop. So that's kind of the route we're going to go. When you buy a harness, you will need to, however, buy a computer as well. Now there's specific years of computers that you'll need, and that's some information that we'll get back to you on, because we are still kind of in the process of learning that and seeing where we can get these computers from for a cheaper price, and kind of see what we need to do to make that happen. So that's something that we're definitely going to be looking into here in the future, and we'll definitely get that information back to you guys. So another thing, when you do a 6.4 or even a 5.7 Hemi swap in one of these Wranglers, typically you're adding quite a bit of weight to the front end. Now that weight can cause the front end to sag slightly. So in our experience, we actually have a buddy of ours who did a 6.4 swap in his Wrangler, and he's running a larger spring to accommodate for that weight to get him to ride a little bit more level. He's a little bit higher than what he would like to be with the spring that he's running. So there's a kind of a happy medium where we'll figure out where we need to be to get that ride as level as possible. So we'll get with you guys about that as well, and show you guys what you can do to make your ride look right and perform right as well. So another thing that we're starting to learn about these Hemi swaps is, so the 392 Rubicon runs a 3.6, 3.8 Pentastar fan and radiator. So that's huge. So if you have a 3.6 or a 3.8 already and you want to do a Hemi swap, you can reuse those two items in your Hemi swap, because you know they're good to withstand the power and the heat created from the 6.4 or a 5.7. So that's a huge cost savings in itself. Now on my Jeep over here, we actually went with a 3-row aluminum radiator just from eBay. It's nothing crazy. It's just a no-name brand, and it keeps this thing cool. I see temps at the highest really beating on it right around 220, and it doesn't stay there for long. However, I am running a 1995 Ford Taurus fan, which is a huge CFM rating, so that really brings the heat down very quickly. And my fan's a little different. It's wired ignition on, so as soon as you turn this thing on, she's ripping. Obviously in the 18 JK, we're going to do things a little bit differently, and it will come on when it needs to come on. It won't be running all the time. But anyway, that's a huge cost savings in itself, is going that route. I'm sure as we get into this, we're going to find some things here and there where we'll need to throw a little bit of money, or hopefully we can save money in other places. For instance, the 6.4, this particular one is a 2018 Dodge Challenger 6.4. It has an electronic power steering. We're not going to be using electronic power steering in our 18 JK. So what we're going to probably do, like we did on mine behind me, is a 2010 Ram 1500 power steering pump. So I'll take you guys over there and I can show you. So on the 6.4, we have this power steering pump. Maybe a little difficult to see. So down in here, let's see if you can see. Right in this area, there's our 2010 Ram 1500 power steering pump. So that power steering pump, we actually drilled and tapped the side of it to run this remote reservoir, which is out of a Dodge Caravan. We just run AN fittings, usually just whatever you can get on Amazon, honestly. So we're running something like that. That's something that we can definitely do on our 6.4 swap that we're going to be doing in our 18 JK. Now, there's a standoff bracket that you'll need for that. It's through Holly. and you'll need to buy that bracket so that your belt is actually routed correctly. Um, so that's another savings that we'll kind of run into is you don't have to go through PSC. You don't have to buy these big name products if you don't want to. There's a ton of information online, and there's a ton of guys like us that are just making it work. Um, it's a very simple swap. It works great. I don't have any issues with my power steering. I am hydro assist, and there's a possibility that we may go hydro assist on the 18 Wrangler as well. But that's something we'll figure out in the future. It's not necessarily imperative to doing our 6.4 swap and doing our budget swap, obviously. Now I'll bring you guys over here. So on the 6.4, particularly this one, it has a car timing cover. Now this is a car alternator. Now on the car alternator, on the 6.4, this is going to be contacting the frame. So there's ways around that. You can trim this slightly. We have a buddy that's done that as well to make it fit. Or you can go with a different timing cover, but to keep this as budget friendly as possible, we're not going to go with a different timing cover. That's what we did in mine. And it was extremely expensive and a hard part to find. So we're going to keep this as easy to modify as possible and make it so if we do run into issues when we're, say, out wheeling somewhere, you can just go to the store and buy a regular old alternator and slap it on there. Now, another thing about the car 6.4 versus, say, like a truck 6.4 or a truck 5.7 is the intake manifold. Now, the intake manifold here, it actually comes out onto the driver's side. Now, in a JK, it's extremely tight. There's a lot of things over there that need to be moved. Your washer bottle is one of them. We've got a friend who did a 6.4 swap in his JK, like I was saying previously, and he just kind of removed his washer bottle to kind of make room for that intake. Now, that's fine, because on mine, we removed my washer bottle as well, and we ordered one of these. This is just a Hemi UTV washer bottle. Comes with the motor and everything. You can wire it directly into your stock controls. Super easy, super simple. It comes with the mounting bracket and everything. This is kind of where we decided we were going to mount it. You can mount it wherever you have room in your swap. Obviously, this is on a Grand Cherokee, and it'll be different with your spacing and everything. And when we get into the swap, we'll kind of show you guys what we're going to do and where we'll put that. We may even go with something completely different, but that's just what we know definitely will work. It's a little bit smaller than your regular washer bottle, but honestly, it's going to work out just fine. So there's just a few things that you can do that are, you can stay a little bit more budget friendly and conscious of to try and make this swap work. You might just have to do a little bit more thinking, get a little bit more creative. Now, another large cost in doing these swaps is going to be the motor mounts. So on our Grand Cherokee, we did DIY motor mounts. We basically just cut them up until they fit. It was a $100 motor mount. It comes with a very hard poly plastic Delrin, something like that. And we match that material on our transmission mount because you always want to match materials on both. Otherwise, you'll have weird vibration. You'll cause things to fail quickly or quicker. So on this one behind me, we're running the same material. But with that being said, you have a lot of vibration from the driveline. It's basically like driving a race car. You're feeling every shift from the transmission. You're feeling all the RPM build up. If you want a more of a crawler build, that's fine. If you want more of a family build, you want to stay with something that's more of a rubber, a softer density material that can absorb some of that vibration and that noise. There are some companies out there that make weld-in as well as bolt-in engine mounts for doing these engine swaps in the Wrangler. They sometimes can be somewhat costly, but that may just be what it is depending on what you want. That's more than likely what we're going to do in the 18 JK with this 6.4 swap, just because it's my uncle's daily driver. It's his family rig. He goes out with his family, they go do some wheeling. He drives it to work. So we kind of want to keep it as comfortable and as quiet as we can, just because we don't want it to be a full-blown crawler, maybe not at this point. He's still running stock axles for the time being. However, we are in the works of swapping the front axle for JK8 axle, and we'll bring you guys along for that swap as well. It's actually sitting right over here on the bench right now, and I've been welding on it here and there when I've got some time, and that'll be going in the future too. So I'll kind of take you guys outside and show you what we got going on here. So my good friend Trev, the owner of that Jeep there, he is getting the trailer all hooked up and ready to go. He decided this morning he was gonna go ahead and change the trailer brakes, and it's not going so well. Typical. There you go. Trailer's all hooked up to Babe. That's what we like to call the truck. We're gonna get out there and go get the JK picked up, bring it back here, kind of take you guys along for the ride, and we'll go from there. All right, so we got the trailer put back together. She's hooked up to the truck, ready to go. Now it's time to go get the Jeep. All right, so we just got here. We're gonna go pick this thing up. There it is, sitting over there. Get her thrown on the trailer. Let's see how she sounds when we fire it up. Probably hasn't ran in, I don't know, a week or so maybe. Actually doesn't sound that bad. Seems okay. Alright, so right now it's sitting at 84 PSI. When we were wheeling it, when it finally blew up, it only had 8 PSI. So I don't know what's going on with it, but well, now it's starting to drop. 82, 80, 87. I don't know, it's strange. We don't really know what's in the bottom of the oil pan, but something. So let's get this thing thrown on the trailer, get it back home, and we'll get it torn apart and start the Hemi swap. Here we go. She's all loaded up.
It sounds so good right now.
Ready to go.
This thing sounds good enough right now that I can sell you that actually.
Look how bent the front axle is though.
A little messed up, but
she's been beat down a little bit. That's alright. We'll get her home and get her fixed up. Ready to go. Ooh, you can see how bad it's blowing white smoke too. It's definitely got something going on with it. It's weird though. It's not making the noises that it was. Seems like it's okay-ish. I guess we'll see though. It doesn't smell very good. Doesn't sound too bad though. Let's see. What was it at for oil pressure when you parked it?
68.
Okay.
And it started losing power as I was driving.
Well, you could see too, the smoke coming out the back was like bright white, and it stinks.
Yeah.
So it's definitely got some kind of issue. I don't know. We'll see. We'll get it torn apart and taken out. Get the 6.4 ready for it. But here it is. It's finally here. Well, that's it for this video. We got the Jeep here. Kind of went over a few things with the 6.4 and transmission. In the future, we'll get into a little bit more, and we'll kind of break it down and go over some more of the parts that we'll need. And we'll kind of get into and diagnose exactly what's going on with this thing. So thanks for watching. Catch us on the next one. So right here, this is how you do your budget stuff.
Okay, temp sensor, oil pressure sensor, set in the dumpster.
Yeah, you just come to the shop over here and you go to the dumpster and find parts for your Hemi build.
Parts right there.